Over the past week, a lot of drama has emerged between Twitch streamers Pokimane and Fedmyster and several other members of an online entertainment group called OfflineTV. While most people are outraged over the way this entire situation has been handled, a lot of people are just genuinely confused on what is going on. Most people recognize the name Pokimane as she has been mentioned by many YouTube channels in the past, but not so much everyone else involved. The situation currently at hand has stemmed from an even larger issue from over the summer, an issue that some, but not all, know about. So the goal of today's video is to explain everything from start to finish in a way that everyone can understand.
Between me and Fed, all the back and forth eventually settled down after many months into what I would call a kind of stale and sort of disingenuous friendship. The way he talked Yvonne and Lily to me and others is so frustrating, knowing what happened between them. And this discussion got to the point of us almost letting Yvonne go from the company. As people within OfflineTV, if we all think badly of someone and our friends also think badly of someone, that can be really impactful on someone's career in esports or on Twitch.
OfflineTV is an entertainment group and YouTube channel with over 2 million subscribers. It was founded in 2017 by Skara, a popular Twitch streamer. The crew originally consisted of only 4 members: Skara, Christian, no, not that Christian, this Christian, Based Yuna, and Pokimane. These members all lived in one home, making it convenient and beneficial to collaborate and create content with one another. Throughout the years, there have been several changes to the members of OfflineTV. Some have moved in, and others have moved out. In 2017, Fedmyster, another Twitch streamer, has joined the household, at one point living under the same roof as these 3 female creators, Pokimane, Lily Pichu, and Yvonne. There were others in the household as well, but these are the most important people for the context of this video. Over the summer, there have been an overwhelming amount of stories coming out in relation to the Me Too movement, especially in the Twitch community. There have been over 300 sold out within the Twitch community, and Fedmyster held a handful of them. On June 27th, 2020, Yvonne and Lily Pichu came forward to the public with assault allegations against Fedmyster. Yvonne was the first to post her experience on Twitter called My Truth, where she shares 2 accounts of Fedmyster allegedly assaulting her. In her document, she goes over how on one night, Fed went into her bed intoxicated. Side note, it was not uncommon for him to have sleepovers in his roommates' bedrooms, and we will get into that more in just a moment. Yvonne explained that while Fed was drunk and lying in her bed, he kissed her hand and made her feel extremely uncomfortable. He also allegedly inserted his arm into the sleeve of her shirt and touched her side. Yvonne brought this up to him on different occasions, and he claimed to have not remembered. Then one night he allegedly came into her room drunk again while apologizing for what had happened before, and then kissed her hand a second time. She also mentioned how Fed would constantly walk into her room and would give her a hard time for locking her door. She added Lily's experience into the document, which prompted Lily to elaborate on it in her own document, which has since been deleted. Lily's story involves how she went through a breakup and that while she was drunk one night, Fed came into her room and began to massage her legs, going up her thighs. A couple of weeks later, he told Lily that he liked her, which turned this previous event into an extremely awkward situation. Lily's post has been archived, and after looking through it, she only briefly mentions Fed. Her story is more about Chris. The reason why this is so interesting is because in retrospect, it seemed like Lily had this huge twit longer talking about specifically Fedmyster, when in reality, he was only mentioned very briefly. That's not to say that he didn't have any faults mentioned in this twit longer, but this does explain much of the confusion that many people were having after this document had come out. After posting this, Lily has explained how she doesn't know what to feel about the situation and how her friends were telling her that this was more serious serious than she assumed it to be. What I find interesting is that Lily is 30 years old, and while it is not impossible for a fully and mentally developed adult to be manipulated in situations, it's extremely peculiar how she is describing this situation as if her friends weren't letting her think for herself. She mentions being torn between what the internet was telling her to think and what her friends were telling her to think, but doesn't show signs of reflecting and coming to her own conclusions on her own. Which I get sometimes things get confusing and you may need guidance and advice from others, but this event in particular just seems more aggressive than normal. Sometime later, she appears to have changed her mind and deleted her tweet longer about the issue. She explained how she thought that most of this information, along with other unrelated situations, should have remained private and that she regrets bringing them up. There's also another testimony from a streamer named Angels Kimmy where she claimed that Fedmyster pressured her into cuddling in bed with him, and while he has sleepovers with many people in their beds, she was not comfortable with him sleeping in hers. She also mentioned how he would act flirtatious with her, but would act differently in front of certain house members such as Poki, even though Angels Kimmy only viewed Fedmyster as a friend. Lastly, she mentioned how he would constantly make her feel uncomfortable by pushing boundaries, and by how at one point he allegedly opened her legs and laid on her crotch, like as a pillow, which was the final straw for her. Another Twitch streamer named Fusely shared her accounts on how Fed was very manipulative to her during their friendship. She mentions how he has lied about different situations, which has damaged her trust for him. Back to Yvonne's post for just a second. Yvonne mentions that the members of OfflineTV had an intervention for Fedmyster where they laid out all of the issues they've had with him being creepy with the other housemates. The way she describes it, it sounds like this intervention had taken place at least a few days before this tweet was posted. She also mentions that she never would have made this statement public after the intervention had taken place, but to her it seems as though Fed did not act as if he were truly sorry for what he had done. However, she does not elaborate any further as to why she felt this way. On the same day Yvonne's tweet longer was posted, OfflineTV made a statement that Fed was being removed from the group and the house. I am under the assumption that this decision was made specifically after Yvonne's post, considering she has not once mentioned him leaving OfflineTV in her statement. In Fedmyster's leaked document, he states, "I also temporarily left the house to stay at my brother's place so Yvonne would feel more comfortable. From what I understand, the more they had talked to people I had called, the more they began to think I wasn't changing and only cared about my image. About 3 days later, as I'm preparing my 7th draft statement, I get a message from OfflineTV that Yvonne is going to release her own statement in 15 minutes. This further concludes my assumption that they did not officially remove him until Yvonne made this public. To me, this is extremely confusing. Why would they wait until this public statement was made to terminate Fedmyster's involvement with the group? From the context given, it doesn't seem like this decision was made until all of this was public, despite them knowing about this 3 days prior. Skara, again the founder of OfflineTV, elaborated in greater detail about the events that had taken place after the intervention that may have led to Fedmyster's termination.
He ends up always kind of manipulating the truth to make himself look better in a lot of different ways, in ways that you don't really need to. You know, if your friend group, if you're like friends with someone, like I always trust Fed and whatever he says about anyone, but it came back to a situation where I found out that it wasn't always the truth. We came out with the statement because after we had a 3-hour intervention with him and 7 other girls, and 6 of the girls all came out with stuff against him, he proceeded after that day to contact the people who weren't there and kind of do exactly what we told him was the problem, which was to tell them only his side of the story, and kind of spin it in a way where he ended up being the better person. But it's like, I don't think that's like, we just had an intervention about it, so it felt kind of weird.
So they decided to terminate him for being manipulative, but not over the claims of sexual assault. They draw the line at feeling lied to and betrayed, but not at him making women in the house feeling uncomfortable. Okay. Before we continue, I just want to throw in my thoughts here. I think Yvonne is valid for feeling uncomfortable and for feeling hurt by Fed after what he has done. I think what he did was really creepy, and he definitely seems to be manipulative at times. And if sharing her experience was at all cathartic for her in any way, I think she should be allowed to do that. Fed himself even admitted to these events in a tweet, apologized for his actions, and also signal boosted both Lily and Yvonne's twit longers. With that being said, however, as somebody who covers all different types of severe topics topics on this channel, I want to point out how serious it is to call somebody a predator or a rapist. Those are very serious and very damaging terms that many have used to describe Fed after this entire situation has been released. And I think that has to do with the wording of the twitlongers. I think it's very important that we recognize that yes, what Fed has done was very inappropriate and very creepy. It's important that we also recognize how this has affected Yvonne and the other girls involved, because nobody should be put in the position where they feel so uncomfortable and voiceless. But we also have to recognize that using the words such as racist and predator to describe this situation is irresponsible and damaging, not only to everybody involved in this specific incident, but to anybody who comes out with their own experiences involving the Me Too movement. So now you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Pokimane? After Yvonne, Lily, and others within Fed's friend group and OfflineTV spoke out against Fed, Pokimane came out with her own experiences as well. Poki shared her thoughts on the situation in a live stream, with her key points being claims that she and Fed never dated or had anything intimate between them. She was at one point interested in Fed romantically, but turned him down in May 2018. Their sleepovers were strange, but she'd agree to them because it's a Fed thing. He'd isolate her from friends and romantic interests. He lied to her romantic interests, claiming that he and Poki were a thing when they weren't, and he tried to get Yvonne fired after the incident with her occurred. Now, there are a lot of hefty claims that definitely paint Fed in a negative light. Pokimane, with over 6 million followers on Twitch, had a lot of power in this situation, as she greatly outnumbered most of her peers and followers, including Fed himself. With her being such a large influencer and emphasizing details on a situation with so many already involved, it became easy for her followers to trust her statements. That was until the past week, when a 25-page document written by Fedmyster was leaked and started to go viral. This ignited an extremely detailed, confusing, and manipulative Google document crusade between Pokimane and Fedmyster. So a brief timeline of events just so we're on the same page. Poki first made her stream. Fed then had the leaked document. Fed made a response to the leaked document, claiming he didn't want it leaked and was trying to stay on peaceful terms. Poki made a response stream, and after she was unhappy with the criticisms by her audience, made a response document. Fed's leaker then makes a document about leaking Fed's document. Fed released a response document to Poki's response document, and then somebody entirely out of left field made their own document about their experiences with Poki, which were unrelated to Fed. I know, that's a lot to follow, but trust me, we're going to walk through this together. Fedmyster began writing this Google document in August, seemingly bypassing the claims from Yvonne and Lily and turning into a direct rebuttal against Pokimane's stream about him. Within these 25 pages, Fed exposes Pokimane for spreading several lies and lots of misinformation in her stream, claiming that she is twisting the truth for her own benefit. I will leave all of the links to these documents down below if you would like to read them for yourself. And if you would rather hear somebody read them for you, I will also be linking Boblax's videos on them as well, considering that he is the real MVP for reading all of this out loud. Instead of going over every single page in the document, I am going to be briefly summarizing key points and share with you a timeline of statements made by both Poki and Fed. In this document, we get a better understanding of Poki and Fed's relationship, where Fed explains how they've grown closer together after a trip to Taiwan in February of 2018. He mentions at this point they've begun spending a lot of time together and became very flirtatious with one another in person and through text. In the document, you can see several flirtatious text messages shared between the two of them, including the now infamous peace emoji, more like fist emoji. So quiet over there. LOL, I got lost in thought. Can you legit hear everything? Ah, oh my god. Lost in thought. Yeah, I haven't started, taking care of myself, you know? I will commence shortly. Peace emoji. Peace emoji, more like fist emoji. LOL, tongue emoji, sweating emoji. Hahaha, have fun. You too. For the boys and girls who don't know what that conversation meant, they were, basically sharing some very intimate information with each other. Needless to say, these text messages aren't shared with the intention to embarrass Pokimane. Rather, they serve a very important purpose and context. You see, Basically, if we go back to that list of key points from Pokimane's claims, it appears that she may have omitted some information. In other words, this shows that she has lied. But what about everything else? Well, let's continue. In May of 2018, Poki told Fed that she just wanted to be friends. Meanwhile, all throughout the month of May, she continued to send flirtatious text messages to him. But Mimi, you don't know, maybe it was at the very end of May. Okay, but she also sent flirtatious text messages to him months later as well, even going into 2019, meaning that she omitted the fact that after this conversation in May had taken place, she continued to have a flirtatious relationship with him. Fed explains in his documents that he felt as though they were in an on-again, off-again relationship, where one moment she didn't want much to do with him, and the next they were back into being very flirtatious. Naturally, this became very confusing and conflicting for Fed. In his documents, he also shared that when they were on the terms of not being flirtatious, Poki would sleep with guys within earshot of Fed's room, which I mean, she's allowed to do that if she wants, but Fed's mental health being affected by that definitely seems like a reasonable outcome. At one point during a time when Fed was confused about their relationship, he found himself in a conversation with a guy they've decided to codename as Steve. After this had gone viral, many people assumed that this may have been a streamer named Fitz, who had already had a scandal with Call Me Carson's ex-girlfriend earlier this year, but to my understanding, this has been debunked and it wasn't him. Back to the story, Steve ends up asking Fed about Poki, where Fed says, well, we're kind of a thing, and apparently immediately felt bad after saying that, so he encouraged Steve to try and go for Poki anyway. Poki became very upset with this, and according to her statement, Fed lied to Steve about them being together. From Fed's point of view, he had only said this because he was confused about where their relationship was. Regardless, he decided to apologize to Poki for breaking her trust. This definitely sounds a bit different than the way she described the situation in her stream, though. Another extremely interesting contradiction is the way that Poki stated how strange it was for Fed to always want sleepovers and how it was weird, but it was just a Fed thing. She worded it in a way that makes the viewer assume Fed was the only one who wanted these sleepovers, which is why it's so ironic that there are leaked text messages that also show Poki wanting to have the sleepovers with Fed as well. If it were as strange and weird as Poki claimed, why would she be so eager to ask him to sleep over as well? Where the isolating comes in is that Poki claims that Fed didn't include her in a lot of outings, and she claimed that he spread a lot of lies about her to her friends. Fed claimed that Poki never really wanted to hang around with the other people in their house unless it benefited her in some way. Now, in this case, I am really unsure of who to believe because multiple people who spoke on this situation claimed that Fed spoke poorly of Poki and others. But as we can see, Poki has already omitted so much information, it's hard to take her word on any of this. Finally, the Yvonne incident. Poki's biggest argument is that Fedmyster attempted to get Yvonne fired after the incident, as Fed would constantly complain about Yvonne's work ethic. Meanwhile, the text messages shown in Fed's leaked document showcase that Poki may have had more intentions to get Yvonne fired than she'd like for you to believe. In Poki's response to this document, she claimed that she was parroting what Fed had told her about Yvonne, and that had she truly known what had happened between them, she wouldn't have said those things. Now, I'm not Pokimane's conscience. I can't tell you whether or not she was telling the truth, that she would have responded differently had she known the circumstance, but what I do know is that it truly appears that she is downplaying her involvement in the desire to replace Yvonne, and that she is also downplaying the way she felt about Yvonne not working, not only in Fed's experiences, but her own as well, as we can see in these messages. In my opinion, from reading all of these messages, I truly think that Pokimane had the desire to have Yvonne removed from OfflineTV. Ultimately, does that change whether or not Fedmyster also wanted her removed? No, not exactly. Poki, however, in these messages does seem to be more eager to take action about this, whereas Fed appears to just be complaining about what was going on. In my opinion, and this is coming from somebody who has worked retail for years, if somebody is part of my team and not working, I think it's appropriate to sit down with them and have a conversation about it, or tell somebody in charge to sit down and have a conversation with them about it, instead of just complaining. Talking creates a petty and toxic work environment, and I think that's exactly what this was and still is. The reason why this is such a big deal, however, is because this paints Poki in the light of hypocrisy for claiming that Fed specifically wanted Yvonne fired because of what happened between them, when in reality, Poki seemed to have shared the same desire, if not a greater desire, to have Yvonne removed, considering her language used in these messages. There were some other manipulative issues in these documents as well. In Fedmyster's document, he shared screenshots of a conversation with Poki where Poki asks him to beg her to stay in his hotel while they were at a convention. Poki's response to this was that she was trying to encourage Fed to mingle with other girls at the convention. Fed's response to that was that he took this as a test from Poki to see if he really wanted her to stay. He claimed he was confused and getting mixed signals. Poki also shared a big part of the story that Fed had omitted in his first document, which was that it was not just her who stayed over in his hotel, but the other girls from OfflineTV as well. But Fed shared a part of the story in his response document to Poki's response document that Poki omitted after adding that detail in, which was that while the other girls stayed that night, he didn't know they were going to ahead of time, but also added that Poki was the only one to share a bed with him despite the others staying over. This to me sounds like manipulative, contorted stories from both Fed and Poki. Both of them omitted information to protect their own reputations as much as possible, and this just doesn't make sense. The other incident was when they had conversated about another streamer named Jody. In Fed's first document, he shares messages between Poki and himself where it seemed like Poki was ranting and raving about Jody talking about Fed in her livestream, and ranting all about how Poki didn't like how Jody was, quote, acting drunker than she really was. The context of this document made it seem as though Poki was extremely jealous of Jody for trying to be flirtatious towards Fed. However, in Poki's document, she reveals that Fed had cropped out part of the text messages where he was egging Poki on and participating more in the conversation than he originally stated. This is extremely manipulative on Fed's behalf, as he too omitted information. An artist, Lil Boom, made a document about Poki unrelated to the Fedmyster and OfflineTV drama, where they essentially stated that Poki copied a dance from another creator called Young Nib. And this dance Poki did eventually turned into a Pokimane Fortnite emote. Lil Boom was the one who created the song used in this dance, so both Lil Boom and Young Nib deserved credit for this situation, but Fortnite is notorious for stealing dances from creators without crediting or paying them. Eventually, Pokimane offered Lil Boom and Young Nib compensation for the emote song and dance. Lil Boom said he did not want the money but to give his compensation to Young Nib instead. Poki claimed that she had already paid Young Nib, however Young Nib told Lil Boom that she hasn't spoken to them and that they were too afraid to ask for payment. At some point, Lil Boom reached out to OfflineTV about Poki, where they were met with a less than pleasant response, where the OfflineTV member not only defended Poki for using offensive language, but also brought up how Lil Boom only paid a certain amount of money for the beat used in their song, which is something that only Poki knew about, therefore causing Lil Boom to realize that Poki was telling other members from OfflineTV about Lil Boom's business, which is extremely scummy. After a very long back and forth in DMs between Poki and Lil Boom claimed that they felt very manipulated and silent. At the end of the day, it's good that Poki at least paid them, however this does once again shed light that she can be very manipulative and inconsiderate towards others, especially when sharing personal and private information. Personally, with all things considered, this definitely makes me respect her even less than I already did for everything going on. There is a lot more to be discussed in these documents, as these were just the biggest issues within them. But to conclude my thoughts on this and explain things from a perspective of a viewer who has spent way too much time diving into these claims, I personally think that this drama between Poki and Fed is extremely manipulative at points on both ends. Both of them have omitted information to maintain as much of a positive reputation that they could possibly find, and that comes off as very disingenuous. I think the entire environment created by OfflineTV as a whole seems toxic and manipulative. Poki said it herself, if OfflineTV doesn't like you, it can affect your career as a Twitch streamer.
As people within OfflineTV, if we all think badly of someone, and our friends also think badly of someone, that can be really impactful on someone's career in esports or on Twitch.
That is something truly horrifying to say, and I don't know why more people haven't noticed that. I personally believe that Yvonne and anybody else has the right to share their experiences if they so choose, and they are valid for feeling hurt, uncomfortable, and creeped out by Fed. However, it is very extreme to take this situation where Fed made someone uncomfortable and use it as an example of Fed being a racist. exist. And many of Offline TV's followers are claiming this. That basically waters down the severity of that word, which is truly dangerous to everybody involved in this situation and anybody who ever wants to share their own personal experiences within the Me movement. I think at the end of the day, things between Poki and Fed specifically should have remained private, or at least most of the details. I think despite what Poki says, she did have malicious intentions when it came to exposing Fed, but I also think that Fed was very manipulative at points as well. And with that being said, I hope this video could bring you a better understanding of the situation in its entirety and could help you form your own conclusion on what is going on. Again, below I have listed the links to all of the documents so you can read up on them if you so choose. If you want to get an even better understanding of what's going on, just be aware that it is a lot of reading. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video, and thank you so much to all of my supporters on Patreon, especially Lewis, Miss Tanisha, and Michelle. The support from all of you has been so helpful in creating content like this and more videos to come. So once again, thank you all for watching, thank you all for supporting, and I will see you later.